Again, foreign workers sent in, this time from West Africa. The furniture is thrown out, and the home is demolished again.
Hello, my name is Stanley Heller. Welcome to The Struggle. The Struggle is shown on 25 cable stations from Vermont to New York City. We're in our 11th year of broadcasts. We're also on the internet at thestruggle.org and our YouTube channel, Struggle Video Media. We begin with the second section of Jeff Halper's talk. Halper is active with the Israeli Committee Against House Demolitions. He was talking about a key aspect of the occupation, Israeli government refusal to give Palestinians permits to build on their own lands. And when they do so anyway, the Israelis knock down the houses. He illustrated it with one particular family, the Shawamrehs.
So you build. And in fact, Salim and Arabia lived in their home for 5 years. Until one day in July 1998, they're having lunch, and there's a knock on the door. And these are the officials of the civil administration. This is Rami, and this is Micha, accompanied by about 150 Israeli soldiers, actually. Salim answers the door, and Rami says to him, "Is this your house?" Salim says, "Yes, it's my house." He says, "No, it isn't. It's our house now. You have 15 minutes to get your belongings out. We're going to demolish it." Now, what would you do? It's not a normal human reaction to say, "Dear, would you please help me take out the dining room table?" You would protest. And one reason why house demolitions for us is such a powerful advocacy tool is there's nothing near security. If you go out of the street, or you go to Congress, which is about the same thing, and you ask, why is Israel demolishing houses? The knee-jerk reaction you're going to get is, well, their houses are terrorists. That's the only explanation Israel leaves you with. There's no other explanation. Why else would Israel do it? You see? Well, no. House demolitions have nothing whatsoever to do with security. Salim was never charged with anything. He never did anything. And so he protested. "No, you can't demolish my home." And when you protest, it turns into resistance. The soldiers are not there for decoration. And Salim was beaten and thrown out of his home. In all the commotion, Arabia managed to slam the door shut with her and her 6 kids inside and started to frantically call. That's how we got there. She happened to call us. We happened actually to be close by preparing a demonstration. It happened in the middle of the day, which is unusual. They had already demolished 5 houses, and they thought they could get 1 more in by the end of the day. And so it was kind of a weird set of circumstances. So we got there. Arabia had locked the door. So the soldiers broke the windows and threw in tear gas canisters to flush the family out. Now, I found the canisters, 2 of them at least, afterwards. Tear gas canisters. I don't know if you ever had a whiff of tear gas outside. These were tear gas canisters made in federal laboratories in Philadelphia. And it was written on the canisters for outdoor use only. So you can imagine you're in your home. So then they broke in the door. Arabia was carried out unconscious. The kids running and screaming in every direction. And this is a trauma that's going to stay with these kids forever. And it isn't a matter of a house gets demolished, too bad, and the next day you get on with your life. You see your parents humiliated, you see the violence, you lose your home. Eyad Siraj was a Palestinian psychiatrist in Gaza. He ran the Gaza Mental Health Center. did a research that more than half of the young people who became suicide bombers had had their homes demolished. So it's a tremendously traumatic thing in Palestinian society. And we get into the act, if we get there in time. Israeli activists, we chain ourselves in the houses, we get on the roofs, we get in front of bulldozers, which is why I'm built this way. And we resist the demolition of homes. And we have a privileged position, because as Israeli Jews, they're not going to shoot us and beat us and put us in jail. So I can get in front of a bulldozer, and it's some weird old guy, and they push me aside. If Salim did that, they'd shoot him. Period. Now we're out of the house, the family's out of the house, the civil administration subcontracts to commercial building companies. If you happen to own a company and you own a little bulldozer, you can bid for a contract to demolish Palestinian homes with the civil administration. So everybody's out, and Rami and Micha say to the contractor, send in your workers and throw everything out. You know, you got 5 minutes, or whatever you don't get out, never mind, we'll demolish it, but throw everything you can. And you can see he sends in his workers. Here's a worker from Romania. He had a crew from Romania that day. And you can see everything is ripped out, torn out. Imagine what you have in your home. I mean, your home is genuinely your sacred space. Your papers, your kids' toys, your pictures, your furniture, everything that's you is all thrown out and destroyed, really. And then the bulldozer comes to demolish the home. Comes through the wall that Salim built, through the garden he planted, and he brought truckloads of earth in order to plant the garden, because this is in fact the Judean desert. And the bulldozer comes through to demolish his home. And here there's a tragedy and a tragedy. The driver of the bulldozer happens to be a Palestinian. He's just a guy that works for this company. One day he'll come to work and the owner will say, you're going to build a road. The next day he comes to work and the owner says, you have to demolish a home. And he was a friend of Salim's. They knew each other. So you can imagine what's going through his head as he's demolishing his friend's house. And again, Salim is lying on the ground watching. Not a terrorist, not a criminal, not charged with anything. If he was guilty of something, he'd be in jail. He wouldn't be on the ground. And it was very poignant. You know, it hit him at certain times. I mean, you know, you're having your home demolished. You don't believe it. But when the antenna collapsed, I remember a moment when the bulldozer came out of the house through his children's bedroom, where, wow, all of a sudden, it hits you what's really going on. And the home was demolished. This is Mohammed Dandis, his neighbor, who lives here, and his home was demolished about a year later. So we decided we're going to rebuild the home as a political act of resistance. Not humanitarian. This isn't good liberal Israelis going to help their poor Palestinian victims, but as a joint act of political resistance to occupation. We're not in touch with the Israeli authorities. We don't coordinate with them. We simply go out to rebuild homes. Here's the tent that the family was given by the Red Crescent Society. And here, Israelis, Palestinians, and these people with the red baseball caps are Christian peacemaker teams. Especially Quakers, Mennonites, Church of the Brethren, but other denominations, mainly in Hebron, that stand between the settlers and the army and the Palestinians, but that also work with us and with others. And together we began to rebuild the home. We always work through Palestinian organizations. Otherwise we would be replicating the occupation if we would just come out and build. We do it through Palestinian organizations, like the Land Defense Committee, for example. Here you get a picture of the agricultural land. And it's really genuinely a peacemaking effort. You know, we're eating together. Here's Salim with Israelis, Palestinians. Here's Arabia, between two Israeli women rebuilding her home. Arabia had never met an Israeli that wasn't a soldier. So here, it's a genuine act of solidarity. Here's a woman intimidated, scared, traumatized, standing between two Israeli women, smiling, and rebuilding her home. And you can see we're out and we built, and we got the roof up. See the scaffolding? And we just poured the roof. It's wet concrete. And I suspected that they were going to come back to demolish again. So I spent the night there with some of the Christian peacemaker teams. And sure enough, 4 o'clock in the morning, the civil administration returns. Here's the jeeps, here's Micha, the bulldozer, the soldiers. And it wasn't difficult, the cement was wet, to simply push over the structure, and it was demolished again. Just a little curiosity. This is the Hebrew University on Mount Scopus. That's how close we are. And this building right here is the Truman Center for Peace. So you can sit in the, talk about an ivory tower. You can sit in the Truman Center for Peace and watch homes being demolished. And the home was demolished again. Salim's face kind of says it all. This is the coffee. We didn't even have a chance to have our morning cup of coffee. The blankets you can see we slept under, and the home was demolished. So we decided we're going to rebuild it again. We are not going to let the occupation win. And this is the political logic of what we do. If this was humanitarian, it would be stupid to pour good money after bad and rebuild homes that can be redemolished. But if there's a political logic, if they demolish 100 times, we're going to rebuild 101 times. And in fact, we've built 187 homes over the last 12 or 13 years, all with support from people like you. We're going to get to that in a few minutes. And I have to say that more than 175 are still standing. This is a story of repeated demolitions because Salim and Arabia have been so brave and have spoken out. Salim's been a couple times in the United States speaking. He speaks in Europe. He speaks in the press. He meets diplomats. And so his home is targeted. And finally, we got the home up again, the third home. You can see it took time because we don't have so much money. We had to pace ourselves, but also the family wanted to be sure that, you know, that they were dealing with their trauma and they really wanted to go ahead. And we finally got this house up. The family moved in. And the next morning, the whole story repeats itself. Here comes Micha again. Again, foreign workers sent in, this time from West Africa. The furniture is thrown out. And the home is demolished again. With a caterpillar, a jackhammer, which really recalls the Presbyterians and what they did last week in their divestment efforts. And the home is demolished again. Salim says the demolition of a home is really the demolition of a family. We know that people can't live without homes. When you're homeless, it's very difficult to function as a human being. For men, women, and children, it's a very different experience. For men, it's very emasculating, it's humiliating. You can't provide a shelter for your family. You can't protect your family. You're humiliated in front of your family. You know, the most famous rabbi of all, who was Maimonides in the Middle Ages, taught that humiliating someone is worse than killing them. Because when you kill a person, you kill the physical person. When you humiliate someone, you humiliate the essence of their being. So that is very humiliating, emasculating, but men get out of the house. Men work, they're out in society, they can vent, they have support. For women, it's a double tragedy. Most Palestinian women, like Arabia, don't work outside of the home. So their home is their whole domestic sphere. It's what defines them as people, as women, as wives, as mothers. So when a woman loses her home, she becomes disoriented. Sometimes women fall into a kind of mourning. You don't know, everything you don't know where to begin. How do I feed my family tonight? What do I do? And then, in addition to that, you can't live in a tent forever. So you end up moving into the home of your husband's family. You move into your husband's parents' home, or the home of one of your husband's brothers. So now you move in, it's not for a weekend, you're moving in with 6 kids to another family that has 6, 7 kids. And they're living in inadequate conditions also. They don't have adequate housing. Now you've got all these people crowded in together. And solidarity aside, it creates tremendous tensions within these families. As Arabia is pressing Salim to get it out, she needs space of her own. Salim can't do it. Salim, when he's under pressure, tends to side with his own family in a way against Arabia. You see, for the women, there's tremendous tensions. Now I'm a woman in another woman's space. I don't have my own space. It creates a lot of tensions, and I have to say there's no divorce really in Arab society, certainly not in working class Arab society. So it leads to domestic violence. I mean, it goes on and on and on. And of course the kids. What happens to the kids? For whom their home is their security. Your room. I mean, the whole concept of our room and what we put in our room with our kids. That security is gone. This is his daughter Lena, Salim's daughter and Arabia's daughter, who went blind during one of the demolitions. She went blind. And we rushed her to the doctor. And as we were sitting with the doctor, her sight began to return. And it was a kind of a hysterical blindness. And the doctor explained it's when the trauma gets so deep that you just can't process it anymore and your mind shuts down. And he said if the sight hadn't come back by itself, there's no way it could have been restored. It wasn't a physiological condition. So it shows the depth of the trauma that these kids are leaving. Nevertheless, the family wanted to rebuild. So we went out and we rebuilt again. Here's Arabia with some more of our volunteers rebuilding her home. And this time we built a home, we called it Beit Arabia, on the name of Arabia. Most of you, or some of you probably know Mike Alowitz. Mike Alowitz is a Connecticut labor muralist. And this was paid for by American labor unions. And it's a mural we painted on the side of Beit Arabia. And it's a mural, there's a dead Caterpillar bulldozer amidst a pile of dead weaponry. It's hard to see, but in the background you see the red flag, you have Palestinian and Israeli workers, or Jewish and Arab workers, marching together like they did and working together before 48. And the figures of 2 women hovering over the scene who died in house demolitions. And we have Craig and Cindy here. One of the figures, of course, is their daughter Rachel, who died in Gaza in 2003 when she was killed by a bulldozer as she was defending the house of the Nasrallah family. And the other figure is a woman from Gaza who died about 2 weeks before Rachel, whose name was Nuha Swedan, who was the pregnant mother of 10 children, who died in her bed at night when the Israeli army bulldozed the house on top of them. So these two women kind of frame the mural. And we used the house as a peace center, and the family was there, and groups would come. January 2012, the Israeli army came back again. And the home was demolished for the fifth time. The home was demolished. We rebuilt the home. This is the summer of 2012. And in November, the civil administration came back and demolished it again for the sixth time. The home that you just saw built was demolished again. So this time we decided, the next time we decided not to rebuild the home. I mean, it really doesn't make sense to put all that money into a home, but we didn't want to abandon the family or abandon the resistance. So what we did is we excavated the demolition. We excavated the home that had just been demolished a few months before. We uncovered the rooms, even the furniture down below, you can see. And we exposed some of these broken concrete surfaces. And then the same pictures I showed you tonight, we put on the concrete surfaces. You see, like this. So today, you can walk through Beit Arabia. You can walk through the demolition. You can see the demolition and get the whole story of the home. And Salim and Arabia tell their story. And it's a place that a lot of tour groups come to, you know, activist groups, study groups, diplomats, journalists come to Beit Arabia. We have little conferences there. And this is the base where we have our camp every year.
Now, that talk by Jeff Halper took place in June and only concerned itself with one kind of destruction of homes. There are others. One very big one is military attacks on Palestinian areas. Took place this July and August. In Gaza, there was a loss of 10,000 homes. Another is what used to be very routine, Israeli punishment destruction of homes. It took place when there was an act of violence and the Israelis caught the perpetrator or someone they thought was the perpetrator. Without any finding of guilt or court proceedings, the home was demolished. From 2001 to 2005, there were some 644 demolitions as punishment. But it was stopped then, not because of some Supreme Court humanitarian decision. The military of the Israelis themselves realized it had been provoking more violence through these punishment demolitions. But 9 years later, this summer, they were revised. It happened when three Israelis, 3 youths, were kidnapped and later killed. Netanyahu's government went back to revenge demolitions. According to ICAD, the military ordered the demolition of entire apartment buildings housing the Abu Aisha and al-Kawasami families and sealed off the home of Marwan Kawasami, a third suspect, by pumping it full of concrete. 8 families, relatives of the 2 of the kidnapping suspects, plus other families, have been rendered homeless, including 22 children. Of course, in apartheid Israel, this kind of punishment only is levied on Palestinians, never on Jews. As most of you know, Mohammed Abu Khader was burned alive in Jerusalem this summer. They arrested several Israelis, but not a brick on any of their homes was even damaged. That's apartheid Israel, 2014. And now to Hebron in the West Bank, October 1st. Israeli soldiers pummeling kids near a school with 23 tear gas shells, all because some supposedly threw some rocks. could say grimly that these kids were lucky compared to what happened to 13-year-old Baha Samir Badr from Beit Lakia. He was shot to death just for standing on the street near where kids were resisting yet another Israeli raid. Go to our website for the details. Professor Vijay Prashad gave a thorough talk a couple weeks ago about ISIS, the U.S., and Saudi Arabia. See it by going to our website. We only have time now for a very short clip. His thoughts on what ought to be done with Saudi Arabia.
I mean, Saudi Arabia is the most toxic power in that region. And it gets total diplomatic cover from the United States to do whatever the hell it wants to do. So the question isn't, should the US bomb? The question should be, shouldn't the people of goodwill and peace pressure the United States to seriously reconsider the carte blanche it gives to Saudi Arabia? There is already in the United States a very deep and important movement about BDS with Israel. Why isn't there a BDS with Saudi Arabia?
That's our program for today. See you next week at this time. I'm Stanley Heller, and this is The Struggle.